Welcome to HarmonyTALK, a podcast about dreamers and doers. Here people from all walks of life tell us about their dreams and the moment they knew there was no turning back as they went from dreaming to doing. This podcast is sponsored by A.M. Skyer, a third-generation family insurance business started in 1920. My name is Greg Frigoletto, your host for this episode. Today is a very special day for me. As a lifelong fan of the New York Yankees, I am honored to be joined by Gene Monahan. Gene spent nearly 40 years with the New York Yankees organization, serving from 1973 until 2011 in his role as athletic trainer. Over his career, Gene was entrusted to care for the injuries of players ranging from Reggie Jackson to Derek Jeter. During his time with the Yankees, they won 7 World Series championships, and I would argue that they could not have done it without him. We are thrilled to have Gene here today to share his story. Gene, welcome to HarmonyTALK.
Thank you, Greg. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
No, the pleasure is absolutely ours. And Gene, to begin, I'd like to remind everybody that this is a podcast that looks to inspire by sharing great stories that demonstrate that dreams can become a reality. In other words, dreamers become doers. So to get started, I would like to go back to a recent episode that I was very fortunate to be a part of. I had the honor of speaking with Ron Cey, and I'm sure, Gene, you're familiar with the name Ron Cey. Ron was a legendary third baseman for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and like many kids, being a big leaguer was always his dream, and the same was actually true for me. And in a similar way, Derek Jeter, a kid from Michigan, always dreamed of one day being the shortstop for the New York Yankees. So then we have Gene Monahan, a kid from South Florida. Was your dream always connected to baseball?
It wasn't until I got involved, and I loved 2 things when I was very young. Professional baseball. My favorite team was from my old town way back when, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And racing. I liked racing. My dad got me interested in racing, so I loved racing too. But I really loved baseball a lot. And when the New York Yankees decided to move from St. Petersburg to Fort Lauderdale, I was amazed and extremely excited and wanted to see them. And after a while, I realized that if I wanted to be a part of this game, and I thought I could, but I didn't really know, I wrote the general manager of the Fort Lauderdale Yankees, which was a Class D at the time, team in the Florida State League, about being a bat boy, and it worked out.
So you write a letter, and typically, as a kid, there are a lot of people that might inspire us. So at that point in your life, you love baseball. The Yankees, at least an affiliate of the Yankees, are moving into town, and you want to maybe potentially be a baseball. Was there somebody that inspired you or encouraged you at that point to write that letter?
No, I did it on my own, and the major league team was moving to Fort Lauderdale, but they were going to leave a Class D team, minor league team there. They had spring training in Lake Wales, Florida. I didn't go that year because I had to go to high school. Long story short, I love the game very much. I love the people in the game very much, and I was way impressed with the people in the game. Nervous and scared, but I tried really hard, and it worked out really well. And after 1962, when I was the bat boy, Mr. Topping Jr. invited me to be the bat boy. The clubhouse man stopped working in mid-June, late June, early July. He asked me if I could do the clubhouse stuff too, and I said, absolutely. So I did the laundry between innings and took care of the clubhouse, shined the shoes, and I just loved the game. And my parents were like, what is wrong with you? And I said, nothing's wrong. I loved baseball, and I'm really out of trouble. There was no trouble back then, but I really did like it. And they had to make adjustments to accommodate me until I got my own car and everything, but it worked out really well. And I love the game very much, and I love racing a lot. And I'm here in North Carolina where I wanted to live on retirement, and I'm into racing.
So as we go further into this conversation, you've said a few times it's worked out really well, and I think by the time we're done with this, there'll be a lot of examples of exactly how well this did work out for you, beginning as a bat boy. So from there, Gene, you're a bat boy, and then you also mentioned that you were a clubhouse man. But somehow the transition went from those phases of your dream to becoming an athletic trainer. Obviously, you loved baseball. You must have figured, well, it's not going to be as a Major League Baseball player that is my segue into the game. What was it that pushed you in the direction of athletic trainer, and what did that process look like for you?
I'll tell you what happened. I played baseball in high school, but I wasn't very adept at it. And I was pretty scared most of the time when I went out on the field. However, after the 62 season in Fort Lauderdale, the Yankees came to me and said, would you like to come to spring training next year? And we call it an internship now. They didn't know what to call it then, but would you like to learn a few things and study the trainers and watch what they do? And maybe you could become a trainer in the minor leagues. And I said, you got to be kidding me. And absolutely do. And I would, and I will. And thank goodness for you. It turned out okay, and it worked really well. And I got the best piece of advice from the clubhouse guy with the Yankees at the time, God rest his soul, Pete Sheehy. Mr. Sheehy told me, keep your mouth closed and keep your ears closed, but keep your eyes open. It taught me a lot. And after going to spring training and making Mr. DiMaggio's tea and cooking the soup, because soup is all they had for lunch, that and an apple. Now it's different. At the time, I observed the head trainers, Joe Soares, Don Seeger, and Dr. Gaynor would come down for a week and a half, 2 weeks. And that was back in the day. And boy, was that influential to me. And I realized in 1963, I really did want to be an athletic trainer. And it worked out.
So you had mentioned a gentleman by the name of Mr. Sheehy who inspired you. And from bat boy, again, to clubhouse man, he asks you this question of, would you be interested in being an athletic trainer? There must have been something that they saw or he saw in you that motivated him to have that conversation. What do you think, Gene, it was that had him asking you if you'd want to be further involved with the organization?
Probably the fact that I took his advice and kept everything closed except my eyes, learned a lot, and he kind of took me aside, and he was very, very kind. We're two Irish guys. He liked Irish guys. I don't know. He was very nice to me. And he told me that you have a future in this game if you do the following things. One of the major things was really, really take care of, not have a favorite, but take care of and honor the players. And I did. I became very attached, and it worked out. I spent 10 years in the minor leagues. I went from Fort Lauderdale, Columbus, Georgia, Binghamton, New York, and then finally Syracuse before I came to New York. It all worked out really well. I took care of the players.
So then you get to New York. Now you're the athletic trainer for the New York Yankees. And we all know, or at least I do as a lifelong Yankees fan, that the organization, in regard to winning is not negotiable. So this was especially true during the years that George Steinbrenner was the owner. And I know that you were there for all of those years. And with that in mind, what was the pressure like for you to keep the players healthy and ready to play every day?
I'll explain it as saying it was immeasurable and undefinable. It was brutal. I was fired and let go by Mr. Steinbrenner 4 times, but I kept coming back the next day and answering the phone, and he'd talk to me. So I guess I just kept my job, but there's many reasons for me to get fired, and other people too, many other people. But it all worked out, and he realized later in life and later in his ownership that I was truly dedicated and I cared about the people. It didn't matter who they were, and I would do my best and be very honest with him, and I would try my hardest. He appreciated that. Obviously, his family now does, and I'm very honored to have worked for him, although it was tough.
Your story there with Mr. Steinbrenner and being fired 4 times, I don't know if you're a Seinfeld fan, but there's a famous episode where George Costanza was fired by George Steinbrenner, or maybe he quit, but he showed up the next day to work. Is that the way it worked for you? You were fired, but you went the next day anyway, and he still took your call?
He used to say to me on the phone, "You're gone. Don't even come back here." All right. Thank you. All right. And I was a young married man, sort of, and I decided to go back the next day, and the phone would ring, and they go, everybody pointed at it and said, "I think that's for you." And I'd pick the phone up and I go, "Gene Monahan here. What can I do for you?" And it was him. And he goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "I'm working." He goes, "Good." And then we went and talked about what we wanted to talk about, or he wanted to talk about. And it worked out. It took a little time, but it worked out.
Either he had a really short memory or a real affection for you, and my guess it would be the latter of the two. And I know a little bit ago you had made reference to the fact that probably in your career, many folks have asked you, who your favorite player would be. And I know respectfully over the years, you've really not wanted to do that. And that's totally understandable. But you have in the past mentioned that Joe Torre was the favorite manager that you may have worked for. And it's easy for me to understand that, having been a fan and having watched how he operated and watched what those years looked like. And I would probably agree that, like you've mentioned, it's about people and how people were treated. It's all about people. I don't care what your career is. It's about relationships. So in regard to Joe Torre, what were his leadership skills or leadership style that you admired most?
Probably his tremendous amount of kindness and honesty. Those two things with each player were really wonderful. And he would, at times, I didn't see it, but I heard about it. He would bring players in and talk to them in his office, obviously saying, close the door, we need to talk. And you're awesome and you're great. Just take the pressure off yourself. And he was a player's manager. He really was. And he would spend time in the clubhouse with the guys, and he'd come in the training room and walk around and pat guys on the butt or their back and whatever. And he was simply really great. I had a lot of wonderful managers, and like players, no one is my favorite. But Joe was a little bit special, and we stay special, and we're very close. And he has a tremendous, tremendous thing for children that he does. And I appreciate that and honor that respectively. I really do. He's just a good guy. And he's one of the few guys that's a little older than me, which is kind of interesting, but the game kind of catches up with you. But yeah, Mr. Torre was special, and he was special with his players. He was special with the game. He was special, very special with his coaches. For example, one very small example, I told him this a month and a half ago at Old Timers Day. One of his great coaches was Don Zimmer, ex-manager of the Red Sox and manager everywhere, Texas. And Joe would say, I'd be standing there on the wall with him right there during the game with him and Mr. Zimmer and Mr. Torre. And Joe Torre would say to Zim, what do we do now? Well, let's do this. Well, all right, we did it. It worked out. Always worked out, it seemed. I love those two very much. And they would wake me up in the middle of the night on planes coming back from the coast. Come on, we're playing hearts. Oh, my goodness. And we'd play cards till we landed, and I was tired, but I knew I had to go to work in the morning, but that's okay. They were great people, and Mr. Torre was special. There's no doubt.
You know, that really does reflect some of what we were saying earlier about relationships and, you know, how people work together and have a camaraderie. And that's a big part of it. And I'm sure it was all those years in the clubhouse that Joe Torre was there. And one story that I read about Joe Torre that, to be honest with you, resonated with me in a way that I can't even explain. And it's a story that I'm hoping you could tell today. And it was regarding the 2001 World Series against the Diamondbacks. And from what I read, going into Game 7, like he normally would do, he'd do a pregame speech. He'd get the guys, you know, all riled up and ready to go for the game. And on this particular day, it's reported that instead of him doing it, he gave you the floor and you made a speech before a Game 7 of the World Series. Can you tell me about that moment?
Yeah, I can. We took the early bus together out to the ballpark. For some reason, I took the early bus instead of a cab. Took the early bus. Mr. Torre was on the bus. He said, maybe I'll ask you to talk to the team. Would you talk to the team? And I go, oh, yeah, right. I'm going to talk to the team. So I thought it was a joke. And then 15 minutes before we took the field, he came in the training room and he goes, you're going to talk to the team here and I'm going to introduce you. So make sure you hit this meeting. And I went, you got to be kidding me. I thought he was joking. He goes, no, just talk to the team. So I did. And I be honest with you, I wasn't prepared. However, it worked out really well. Mariano Rivera was after me. He was honored. Don Zimmer cried because I said, in my mind, gentlemen, you're all champions. Doesn't matter to me. You're all champions, and you'll always be champions. And God bless you very much. And you're very wonderful people. And it worked out really well. We did not win the game, and we lost the World Series. But the players who were on that team kind of still remember that.
You know, real leadership, it's okay to wear your emotions on your sleeve and speak from your heart. And it surely sounds like you did in that moment. Having heard that story, it's a great segue actually into the next question I have for you. And as you tell your stories, I can tell that you are a super humble guy. And please excuse me as I get into this next question and bear with me as I get into it. So to set up the question, I want to go down memory lane just for a moment. So at an Old Timers Day game honoring you over the Stadium PA system, Michael Kay the Yankees announcer, said the following: "I wish that everyone in this stadium would get a chance one day to meet Gene Monahan. He is the personification of class and grace and represents the Yankees the best way possible." In another example, on opening day of the 2010 season, you were facing the reality and challenges of throat and neck cancer, but somehow you still managed to get to the opening day ceremonies and introductions. When you were called onto the field for the pregame ring ceremony, and at the urging of the players, again, Michael Kay delayed the next introduction to allow you to have the extended standing ovation that was being offered to you. What do those moments mean to you, and what does it represent?
To say it meant a lot is kind of silly. It meant everything. I didn't realize it immediately at the time. However, it means beyond conception. To have all those people there and all the guys and Jorge Posada standing on top of the dugout, holding everybody back and letting this guy, me, stand out there in right field beyond the first base and stand there, tears came into my eyes because, number one, I have family that I love. Number two, I had a career that I really loved and enjoyed, players that I felt total love for and took care of. And then to get this honor is like, how could this be? But I understood it, and it meant the world to me. I'll never forget that, and I'll never forget the way the guys were. And at the end, I just wanted to go back inside. I was tired. I wasn't feeling that great, but it meant the world to me at the time.
For me as a Yankee fan watching over the years, it was no surprise to me that the ovation that you received that day was exactly like it was. And as anybody would watch a Yankee game, your presence always seemed as though you were officially not just the athletic trainer, but a member of the team. And truly that day personified that. And also, your words just now reminded me of the famous Lou Gehrig quote, in a similar circumstance where maybe he was dealing with some real challenges. He said, for the past 2 weeks, you've been reading about a bad break, yet today I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. And maybe you and Lou Gehrig, in a similar moment, had a similar sentiment, which I think is really, really awesome.
It's very strange to make that comparison, but I do understand it. And I do remember those days, and they were very, very difficult, but I had wonderful people on my side, and the players were tremendous.
So if we could, going back to your career with the Yankees as the athletic trainer, I don't know what that's like to be a part of Major League Baseball. And for anybody that does, like you, I'm sure it is truly a dream come true. But I'm sure along the way, with the rigor of the game, the rigor of the job, life on the road, there were probably personal sacrifices that went along with it.
There's no question about that.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about that part of Major League Baseball?
Yeah, especially in the major leagues. Half the month, sometimes 3/4 of the month, you're not home on the weekends. And when you are home, you're working. I had 2 children at the time that were little and every day. It was hard. It was tough. You had to do both. And it was very difficult to not be there. And that's hard. And the rigors and tough times are incredibly tough. And the late flights, the late buses, it's brutal. It's tough. But if you love the people you work with and you love the game and you can deal with it and you can help those people that love you and are your family or otherwise, it works out really well. But you're correct. It's a very tough life. But when you're younger, like I was, it worked out. It's just you had to put some time into caring for people that you really cared and loved for. Yes, it was tough.
Yeah, I would imagine outside of baseball, the priorities you've had would have been the things that you were missing because of baseball. That includes family. Also, as we discussed earlier, and based on your memories as a kid, combined with your love of baseball and the Yankees, did working for the Yankees and having Yankee Stadium be your office, if you will, did that ever lose its mystique? Did it seem to you when you were heading to the stadium that you were going to work? Or was it something you loved so much it didn't even seem like work?
Didn't seem like work at all. Never did. I lived in New Jersey. On a good day, 20 minutes. Bad day, hour and a half over that bridge. It was tough. I'd always go hours before the players would show up so I could be ready. It was the point where you didn't think about what you had to do. You just knew you had to do it. And you knew you had to be good at it. And you knew you had to be comfortable at it. And you knew you had to be kind. Like Derek Jeter used to say, if you're humble and you're kind, you're going to go a long way in this game. And I guess that's what happened.
That's great advice, not only for the game, but for anybody that wants to be successful on any career path. Humble and kind go a long way, and it's never a bad way. With all of the years you've had in baseball and your success as the athletic trainer for the New York Yankees, I'm sure it would be very difficult to do, but is there a most memorable moment for you?
There were many. Without getting into retirement and what they did for me and how the players reacted, I didn't want to bring that up, but they were very kind. But I remember in 1976, I guess, in the later extra innings, the 9th or 10th inning, Chris Chambliss hit a home run, put us in our first World Series. We lost 4-0 to Cincinnati, but we went to the World Series. And we were tired. We were beat up. We got beat, but we learned a lot, and they learned a lot. And boy, did I love them all. And, every year the roster changes and everything. But the following year, we won the World Series, beat the Dodgers, I believe. And it was unbelievable. But I would say when Chris Chambliss hit that home run, my mouth dropped and I thought on the bench, oh my goodness sakes alive, we're in the World Series. And it meant the world to me. It really did.
If I could, with that in mind, go back just a minute to the reality that for the Yankees, for a lot of your career, losing was not an option. And from what I'm hearing from you, real leaders understand that if you're going to have very high expectations, you have to lead by very high example. And it sounds like through your career, you were surrounded by a lot of people that emulated that thought. If you could, maybe just a little bit more, tell me about what truly was the expectation. Most years, maybe specifically during those Torre years, during the Steinbrenner years. Was it really its World Series championship or bust?
Kind of. I came to New York when Mr. Steinbrenner came to New York in 1973. I had 10 years in the minor leagues and 39 in the major leagues. And Mr. Steinbrenner instilled on everyone that winning was more important than anything. And I learned that. I wasn't involved in that 100%, but I instilled that as well as I could with the captains and the players that we had and tried to promote that because winning meant everything and postseason meant everything. Postseason and not winning, that's tough. But more than we didn't, we won in the postseason. And I'm forever grateful for the Steinbrenner family. I'm forever grateful for, God rest his soul, him. He was wonderful to me as it turned out. A little tough, but wonderful. But the mystique of being a Yankee and being a world champion and having pride, consideration for others, and humility, it meant a lot. It really did. And for that, I'm forever grateful. I learned a lot. I learned more than I could ever learn doing something else. And I wanted to be whatever, a PR guy or a Christian brother or whatever, but it turned out really well. And I'm very grateful for that. And I retired after I got ill, and I worked another year in 2011. That was it. So I came down here to North Carolina, and I wasn't here 4 months before my good friend Jay Fry, who now runs Indianapolis Motor Speedway, had me interview at Hendrick Motorsports, and now I'm working there part-time in retirement, which is great, but it's silly. I got to stop soon, but it's really good. And I talked to the pit crew guys, that's who I take care of, about winning and everything. And at Hendrick Motorsports, we've been very successful. And I'm very thrilled with that. Thank you.
To wrap up, you've mentioned in your last answer there about the humility as part of what over the years was really one of the recipes to success. And having heard your story from bat boy to one of the most highly acclaimed athletic trainer in sports history, it's very impressive to me that you've represented this with a high dose of humility, and I really appreciate that. I've been talking with Gene Monahan, longtime athletic trainer of New York Yankees. Yankees announcer Michael Kay once said, "I wish that everyone in this stadium would get a chance one day to meet Gene Monahan." Well, today, I did, and boy, am I glad I've had this opportunity. This has been Harmony Talk by A.M. Skyer, a third-generation family insurance business started in 1920. I'm Greg Frigletto. Thank you to the legendary New York Yankee athletic trainer Gene Monahan for being with us today. To our listeners, continue to dream and keep doing.